Hello, my name is Ryan, and this thesis is titled The Seriousness of Play. So here we go, check it out. This is my project, but before we dive into it, allow me to share the research questions asked and the methodology subsequently developed to arrive at this point. So my line of inquiry commenced by asking the question, how can architecture encourage broader and more inclusive social interaction? To initially test these ideas, 9 geopolitical borders were selected as symbolically rich sites of division, and architecture was explored to see how design could potentially provide relief to these social tensions and divisions. In architecture, the architecture was heavily encouraged by children's spaces and childhood design, as evidently kids care less about ethnic and political differences than adults do. And that led to the next iteration in my line of inquiry, which is what is serious and mature architecture? How do we define it? And are those definitions working for us? I think that right now, when we think of serious, mature architecture, values of symmetry, rigidity, not that colorful, almost like an urban fortress come into mind. And I'm not sure that's the optimal definition for serious and mature architecture. Why can't it be colorful, asymmetrical, flexible, and porous? We ought to elevate our conceptions of playful design as not as exclusively for children, nor fantasy parks serving as escapes from reality, but as a legitimate and valuable approach to serious, mature architecture. So how do we do that? What is playful? How do we define it? How do we design it? Well, over the course of the past year, my research has led me to create a methodology that I've coined the ABCs of playful design. The ABCs of playful design are rooted in values of color, flexibility, asymmetry, and porosity. And the idea here is this methodology provides a useful framework to leverage architecture's ability to encourage broader and more inclusive social interaction. Regarding the ABCs themselves, A, appropriating space, concerns with adaptive reuse and a family of flexible architectural objects. B, bringing together, prioritizes identifying social axes and social nodes in the design process, and then leverages diverse circulation types and overlaps them at these social nodes. And finally, C, contrasting style, focuses on the enclosure of the space. By creating a colorful and asymmetrical envelope, people might be like, what's going on over here? But the hyperporosity of that enclosure ensures that people feel invited to enter. So as opposed to the symbolically significant geopolitical border, to test out the ABCs of playful design, I was searching for a more practically significant border, what we could call maybe a silent border. And I found that in my lovely hometown of San Diego, California, along El Cajon Boulevard. So when we look at the area in between the Kensington and City Heights neighborhoods, 2 different San Diegos are revealed on either side of the boulevard or border. North, home prices are much more expensive. South, not the case. The zoning is different. North is more single-family residential. South is more multifamily. And the border is racially separate. This boulevard racially separates as well. The boulevard itself is a major transportation artery in San Diego running east to west. And while the Interstate 8 kind of took some of the pressure off of it, it still has a ton of movement and is still a pivotal transportation artery in San Diego. And recently, the area around my site's been getting a lot of love. So across the street, the YMCA opened up a couple years back. And then kitty corner to my site, 2 prominent architecture firms here in San Diego are designing a ton of senior and affordable housing units. And yes, San Diego is not necessarily renowned for a public transport, but there is a bus line that runs along El Cajon Boulevard, and my site features a bus stop. Here's a couple photos of the area. All right, so we found a site, we have the methodology, let's test it out here. So we can break it down step by step. Step 1, work with what is. Step 2, use that existing infrastructure as the foundational logic to identify social nodes and social axes. Step 3, open up the circulation of those existing buildings to flow into these social nodes. Step 4, a colorful, asymmetrical, and porous shed encloses the space. Step 5, diverse circulation types start to populate, bringing people around the skin of the canopy, as well as from the ground floor to above. Step 6, the flexible family of architectural gets populated, and here we go. Here come the people. So a couple flyovers, zooming in that we can return to later. Here's the bus stop. So to break down a little bit more of the ABCs, appropriating space, so that begins with adaptive reuse. It builds on all the existing wonderful arguments for adaptive reuse, but adds a social orientation component to it to try and provide further justification for the preservation of existing buildings. And then below, we see the family of flexible architectural objects. This ping pong table right here, now they're all kind of twisted. There's little like weird bubbles. I'm not going to brag, but I'm quite good at this sport. And I would love to apply my skill set on this table. So hopefully one day I'll have the opportunity. B, bringing it together. So I think there's tons of advantages of having a amphitheater-like public realm. But of course, the topography is inherently divisive, and my project's all about inclusivity. So how to reconcile this dilemma? I think I found a playful solution in being inspired by the magic carpets on ski mountains, excuse me. And this red carpet is essentially a magic carpet that meanders its way around the site. Other circulation types include elevators, stairs, ladders, tunnels, ramps, slides, not bad, slack lines, the best, and crawl nets. And C, contrasting style, the envelope of the shed reinforces these social accesses. And then in the Will Oslop tradition, colorful slanted columns provide the structure. And, to be a bit speculative, yeah, the technology is not there yet, but why can't these columns one day become like wind turbines? We begin to see the ABC's methodology applied in this section perspective. So it's cut along one of the primary social axes. And when we zoom in, we see the central circulation figure, which is this ramp. It's asymmetrical, extends along into the social axis. And we can note that, yes, this project's a celebration of movement, but there is seating along the entirety of the circulation. So it's also the circulation of place of leisure in and of its own right. In site plan, we see how it starts to read compositionally. And then bringing it in, we can see how the existing buildings provided that strategic logic for where the social nodes were located. And we kind of have an all roads lead to Rome situation over here. We can call this social Rome, not that Rome's not social. And there's a relationship that exists between this kind of central courtyard-like place and the bus stop over here that loops around with these two social axes that we can see better zoomed in. Whoop. And then how can architecture bring different social groups together? I think it doesn't need to be that complicated of a question. I think something like having slides, where generally children are going to use, fill out into seating, where maybe people from the senior housing come across the street and have their coffee or light debates in the morning. And just having that recognition of being seen in the public realm is a really great starting point that doesn't require that much activity. And then back to the ping pong table and trying to provide some spatial agency. I think of childhood design and kids can move their environment and they kind of create different conditions for what they want in that moment. So that's the value or the purpose of the family of flexible objects. And the idea is that the table could come into this tunnel space and that could activate the area. Finally, while the ABCs of playful design methodology absolutely has a social priority, that doesn't mean we forget about other variables. So environmentally, the shed brings in rainwater, can be collected and pumped back into the site. The shed itself serves as a second skin to preserve the lifespan of the existing buildings. We could have food generation or energy generation. Economically, the space becomes a market. It's hosting concerts. Politically, we could host our political rallies there. I don't know, lighten the mood a little bit, a little more fun. Public health is a ton of movement in the project. And educationally, it could be museum, art gallery, and similar things. But there's other variables that we can consider. So in conclusion, my research over the past year into a topic that I'm so passionate about has yielded a methodology, the ABCs of playful design, that I believe moving forward will be a useful framework for leveraging architecture's ability to encourage broader and more inclusive social interaction. Thank you for listening. I'm really looking forward to you guys telling me how I can improve this.